Владимирович, огромное спасибо за...
Mr. President, many thanks for this. I have tired you. I apologize. No, we have just started. It's merely the beginning. But you have set the very high bar for this conversation that will cling to many of the topics that you have just mentioned. Actually, indeed, this polycentric multipolar world order is kind of still fledgling, and description is at the inceptional stage. It is very complex and sophisticated, and as in an old parable, we may touch a part of our body, of a body, and believe this is the entire elephant, but it's merely a part of the elephant's body. Well, you know, I've cited practical examples. You know, these are no idle words, not lip service. You know, sometimes we're faced with different issues to be resolved in different parts of the globe, and in the past times there were two blocks, the Soviet bloc and the Western bloc, but you know, currently, you know, things have changed, and now I may be facing a dilemma whether I should act in this or that way. But if I act in this way, this will impact those stakeholders. If I act in another way, this is impact someone else. So, and you know, well, in several occasions we opted for an omission. When sometimes it is wiser to exercise restraint than to act. And these are the realities of today, and this is something happening in practice. Well, at school, have you been playing chess? No, I was a chess player anyway. Good. Then let me continue with respect to what you have said.
Regarding the practice, not just the theoretical analysis has changed, but the practical actions cannot be the same as they used to be, and certainly the preceding decades. Many relied on the institutions, different international organizations, structures, and structures within the states that were adopted and adapted to solve certain problems, and many experts. And we discussed that too at the Valdai Discussion Club in the previous days, say that the institutions, for certain reasons, become weaker, we even lose their efficiency. And the leaders, the heads of states, now have to assume much more responsibility than before. In that respect, I have a question to you. Are you feeling, being an Alexander I at Congress in Vienna, who was personally negotiating the New World Order, being alone?
No, I do not feel like this. Alexander I was an emperor, and I am a president elected by popular vote for a certain term. This is the biggest difference, number one. Secondly, Alexander I used might to unite Europe, defeating the enemy that had invaded our territory. We recall the Vienna Congress and all other things and what was done by him with respect to where the world was heading. This is a contentious thing, whether monarchies were to be restored anywhere across the board, or one should have tried to turn the wheel of history in a different direction, looking at the nascent trends and heading this new progressive movement. But, you know, this is a digression from your question. Apropos, as regards contemporary institutions of nowadays, they have degraded when some countries of the collective West tried to use and capitalize on the situation that came into play after the Second World War and the end of the Cold War, proclaiming themselves the winners in the Cold War, and many countries started exercising resistance and balking. And the West, after the Soviet Union ceased to exist, Western structures injected very many manpower in their in governing bodies of the ex-Soviet republics, and they acted. Those new staff members acted in a very crude manner and blunt manner. And OSCE, why was the OSCE created and established? To resolve complex issues in Europe, and it boiled down finally to becoming a venue and a platform to discuss human rights in the post-Soviet space. Well, listen, there are many problems in this respect, but you know, in Western Europe too, they have problems, and this Department of State of the United States paid heed to the fact that they started having human rights issues in the United Kingdom. Well, let them live happily. But you know, those problems existed before, and you know, those professional organizations started handling Russia and the post-Soviet space, but this was not the original mandate of theirs. So, and it became pointless. The original mandate in the previous frame of reference with the existence of the Soviet bloc and the Western bloc was different, and these institutions degraded because they stopped doing what they had been created for. But you know, no other option than looking for consensus-based solutions, and trade-offs exist. And you know, we came to understand gradually that some institutions were to be established to resolve different matters, not the way our Western colleagues and counterparties tried to resolve them, but, you know, building upon consensus. This is how Shanghai Cooperation Organization was established. Well, originally, it was about sorting out the borderline disputes between the former Central Asian republics of the USSR and China, and it proved efficient, very efficient, and we started expanding its mandate, and it lifted off, and gradually this is how BRICS came into existence. I received the Indian Prime Minister and the Chinese President, and I suggested we should have a RIC format, tripartite format, and we agreed to get together on a regular basis and engage our foreign ministers, and we kicked the ball rolling, and despite some of the minor problems that they had between themselves, some of the issues, anyway, this platform, this organization proved efficient, and no one wants to bulge out or press ahead with their interests. And everybody got to understand that balance should be struck, and Brazil and South Africa volunteered to join, and BRICS was established. So these are natural partners united by one and the same concept of how to find solutions to different problems in a mutually acceptable way. And, you know, I mentioned regional entities in my intervention, and their authority and clout have been growing. This is the guarantee that this new complex multipolar world has all the chances to become sustainable.
In your presentation, you used a very nice metaphor about might makes right, where you do not take a knife to a gunfire, so, and once there are no other means, there is just power that you have to use, and in geopolitics it came before. A lot's been discussed, and we did that, and a whole session was dedicated to that topic, what the new war is about, the modern war. For sure, it has changed. What is your take as the commander-in-chief, as a major politician? What is different? What has occurred to the war?
Well, this is a very specialist question. Still, it is very important. Most importantly, in the first place, non-military ways of resolving military issues have always existed, but now with the advent of state-of-the-art technologies, they acquire new meanings like information attacks, cyber attacks, trying to impact political consciousness and sentiment of a potential foe nation, and attempts to see the degradation of this public sentiment, and now we're seeing the revival, renaissance of a Russian tradition. Girls, start wearing Russian folk garments when they get together. This is something that makes me happy. I rejoice over that, despite any attacks to putrefy, make our society putrefy. They never succeed. Our youths have their own inbuilt inherent protection against such attempts to impact the public sentiment. And this is a testimony of the maturity and strength of our society. Same refers to attempts to damage our economy and finance, which is also very dangerous. But what if we speak about military components? Many novel things appear because of the advent of new technology. And everybody has heard, but these are unmanned aerial systems in the water, in the air, and on the ground, unmanned vessels, autonomous vehicles, and aircraft. These are of dual use. All of these are of dual use, and this is one of the peculiarities of today. Many things applied at battlefield are of dual use, many of the items. Let's take the unmanned vehicles. They may be applied in medicine and while delivering food and carrying different cargoes, and at battlefield too. But that gives rise to the need to develop this reconnaissance and jamming systems. And tactics, combat tactics at the battlefield have been changing. So the tanks are used in a different manner now, not for the sake of breakthroughs, but to provide support to the infantry from hiding places and stations. But the pace of the change is what matters. Many things change over 1 week or over 1 month. We may apply something, but all of a sudden, like long-range, high-precision weapons become less efficient. Why so? Because the adversary has been applying the electronic jamming systems, and we need to find an antidote in several weeks, and that happens incessantly at the battlefield and in R&D centers. This is the pace of state-of-the-art change and the rapid change we're seeing today. of the current warfare. Everything has been changing, apart from one thing. The bravery, the courage and heroism of the Russian soldier remain unchanged, and we take pride in that, enormous pride. When saying Russian soldier, the Russian soldier, I'm referring to all sorts of ethnicities and different creeds and different ethnicities stand up to that, saying that I am a Russian soldier, they say. And this is true. And Peter the Great said, who is a Russian? If you know, okay, but I'll tell you, unless you don't know, a Russian is someone who loves Russia and who serves his country.
Thank you so much. Well, regarding kokoshniks or the women's headwear, I understand, and I will dress like that next time. Mr. Putin, you spoke about the speed of change, the pace of change, and really this is very tremendous, and everything is changing so rapidly in the civil sphere and in the military sphere, but probably in the upcoming decades that would be like that. But 3.5 years ago, when the special military operation was started, some criticism was voiced regarding the Russian army, regarding the Russian state, that we are lagging behind in some aspects. And some failures that occurred were due to that. All that period of time, have we catched up? And secondly, once we're speaking of the Russian soldiers, at the moment, what is the situation on the front line? What is your take?
Well, most importantly, it's not that we lag behind, but, we ain't seen some of the novel things. Not that we wanted to do something, but we failed to do that on time. Some things are brand new for us, and this is my first point. My second point is that we've been waging a war. We've been manufacturing the military hardware. But, on the other side, very many countries, all NATO countries, have been waging war against us, all of them put together, and there are instructors, unfortunately, who actually participate in the hostilities. They established a special center in Europe that has been providing the support to the Ukrainian army, feeding information and intelligence data from satellites to them, training them, supplying arms, and the instructors participate not only in the training but also in the decision making and the implementation of these decisions. Definitely, this is a formidable challenge for us. But the Russian army, the Russian state, and our defense industry has adapted themselves quickly to this new challenge, and we have been rising up to this challenge. It's not an overstatement or bragging to say that currently this army is the most combat effective with respect to the degree of training and technical capabilities, and the knowledge to apply those capabilities and supplying new prototypes of items to the front line. And the tactics also, we're quite knowledgeable. We excel. This is the answer.
Our interlocutors and your interlocutor across the ocean have renamed the Defense Department into the Department of War. Probably the same thing, but there are nuances. Do you think the names matter?
Well, I don't think. Probably not, or probably as you name the ship, so it sails. So probably there is some point to it. But, this sounds quite, a bit aggressive. The Department of War, ours is the Ministry of Defense, so this has been our tenet. We don't have any aggressive intentions against third countries. Our defense ministry aims at providing for the security of the Russian state and the people of Russia.
And he says that Russia is a paper tiger.
A paper tiger. Well, I've said that Russia has been waging a war not against Ukraine, but all NATO countries put together. So if we speak... Well, you've asked me what has been happening on the front line, battlefield line. I'll come back to the tiger thing, but, all along the battlefield line, our troops have been advancing. The northern group in the Kharkiv region, there's a location of Volchansk, and in the Sumy region, there's also a location called Yunakovka. It has been transferred to our control, and we have taken half of Volchansk. I think it is a matter of time. The other half will be retaken soon, and a security buffer zone is being established in a firm and resolute manner, as planned. The western group of our troops has virtually fully, well, two-thirds of Kupiansk have been taken, which is a location where we have seized the center, and the hostilities have moved to the south. Another major location called Kirovsk has been transferred to our control, and the southern group of our troops has entered the city of Konstantinovka. This is one of the defense bastions like Konstantinovka, Sloviansk, and Kramatorsk, which are the fortifications that had been created for more than 10 years with the help of the Western professionals and military professionals. But we have approached and entered those, including also Seversk, a major location too. And the hostilities are ongoing there. The central group of our army has been quite active and efficient in operations, and they have entered the location of Krasnoarmeysk, the south of it. I will not delve into detail, also because I just don't want to inform our foe, strange as it might seem, because this might seem strange, my words, but actually they don't know what has been happening. They have very little coordination, so I would not wish to supply information to them, but, our soldiers work there, okay. With respect to the eastern group, it has been advancing rapidly at a good pace in the north of Zaporozhye region and Dnipro region, and the Dnieper region, regional group also is quite effective and confident. So 0.13% of Lugansk region is what is still controlled by the adversary, so we will retake that, and 19-something% is still controlled by of Donetsk region is still controlled by the adversary. 24 to 25% is the remaining territory under the control of the Zaporozhye and Kherson regions, and I'm in control of the Ukrainians, and we hold the strategic initiative in a confident way in all these locations, but actually we've been advancing steadily and resolutely. Are we a paper tiger? Then what is NATO in this case? What is NATO like if we're a paper tiger? Okay. The main thing for us is to maintain our confidence, and we are confident.
Thank you. Thank you so much. There are such toys that you make out of paper and to make a tiger. I do think that next time you meet President Trump, you can give him such a toy.
Well, we have our own relationship, and we know what to give one another, and we treat these things with calm and ease. I don't know whether it was irony or what the context was, Well, he uttered that and talking to his interlocutor like the paper tiger. Okay, then what followed? Go and get to grips with this paper tiger, he might have said, but things on the ground are different. Actually, the problem is, well, they receive, the Ukrainian army receives a lot of supplies of arms, as many systems as they need. But in September they have lost 44,700, and around half of that is irretrievable. And the forced mobilization brought in only 18,500 new recruits, and 14,500 have returned after treatment in hospitals. If you add the mobilized ones and the returnees and all those who they lost, it's minus 11,000 per month. So they cannot replenish their reserves on the front line, but they see their army dwindling. If we take January to August, this span, 150,000 people have deserted, and they have recruited 160,000 more, but 150,000 of defectors is a lot. And, given the current casualties, that means that they have only one alternative, reducing the mobilization age, threshold age, but this will not yield good results. According to our and by Western specialists, this will hardly give or yield positive results because they don't have time to train their newly recruited soldiers, because our troops keep advancing day after day. So they cannot entrench themselves or train the military personnel, and their casualties exceed the inflow. So they'd better the Kiev leadership would better think of how to come to terms, and we proposed that on many occasions.
Do we have enough personnel for everything?
We have a lot of these. We also have casualties, but they are much lower than the ones of the Ukrainian forces. And our recruits are volunteers. They volunteer. They come to the draft stations on their own will. We don't have any forced mobilization, any compulsory mobilization, unlike the Kiev regime. This is not what I have invented. This is objective, real data, and the Westerners also prove that. January to August saw 150,000 of defectors in Ukraine, because they snatch people in the street and afterwards they flee the battlefield, and we call on them to surrender, but they are destroyed by punitive squads or UAVs, kill them, controlled by mercenaries who do not care for Ukrainians. So their army is very, very, very bare bones. The elites don't participate in the hostilities. They just send their people to be slaughtered. This is why that many defectors.
You see, we also have these, and it usually happens in armed conflicts, but it never compares to what they have. Similar to their kinds, it's just singular cases. That's where the problem comes from. Maybe they can lower the conscription age to 21 or 18. This will not solve the problem. This is what has to be understood, and I hope that this understanding will come to the leaders of the Kiev regime, and they will find it in them to sit at the negotiation table.
Thank you. Dear friends, please ask your questions. Ivan Safranchuk from the front. Mr. President, thank you for your very interesting introductory remarks. And you already set this really high standard for this discussion as you spoke with Fyodor Lukyanov. Let me clarify. Those cardinal changes that were going on in recent years, were you surprised by anything? Were you surprised by the rapid desire of some of the Europeans to start this confrontation with us? Some of them are no longer ashamed to be participating in Hitler's coalition. Some of those things you could not even imagine. Were you surprised in terms of how it was even possible? And you mentioned how in the world of today you have to be ready for anything. Anything can happen, but quite recently it seemed like the situation was more predictable. Was there anything that surprised you?
First of all, you see, as a whole, overall, no. There was nothing much surprising. Because I could imagine how it could look, but you see, I was quite taken aback by the readiness and this desire to fully review that used to be positive in the past. You see, first of all, they've taken these very tentative steps and started to compare the Stalin regime with the fascist regime in Germany, Hitler's regime. They've started putting them on the same shelf. So they've tried to bring up to surface the Pact of Molotov and Ribbentrop. They've spoken about the Munich deal of '38 as if they've started to forget about it, as if it never happened. The Prime Minister didn't come to London, shaking the agreement with Hitler when descending the plane, saying, "I bring peace." But even back in the day, the UK had people who said that now war is inevitable. That was Churchill. So Chamberlain said, "I bring peace," and Churchill responded with, "War is inevitable." So that was the estimation back then. They talked about the Molotov Pact. They said that Soviet Union was coercing with Hitler, but you were the ones who coerced with him the day before. And they're still acting as if it never happened. Perhaps they can try and spread propaganda, try to brainwash people, how these things don't align. But when it comes to it, we know what really happened. So that was the first part. But as we go on, the more the merrier. Not only have they tried to compare Stalin and Hitler, they've also tried to fully forget the results of the Nuremberg process, which is quite concerning because these are participants of a joint fight. And this Nuremberg process was a joint effort. And it happened in order to avoid repetition of anything like that in the future. They started eradicating monuments to Soviet soldiers who fought Nazism. I understand that there were some ideological factors at play, but as I've already said, the Soviet Union also led the policy of trying to impose political system in Eastern Europe. That is clear. But people who fought Nazism, they laid down their own lives for it. And they weren't at the head of Stalin regime. They weren't in charge of anything. They've simply paid with their own lives, trying to defeat Nazism. And so on and so forth. And this is what shows that there is no end to their rhetoric, but only because it has to do with Russia. They need to set certain arms to it. And when I've come up on stage, I've taken a book with me. I wanted to read something to you. But what I wanted to say, at home, my table, I have a Pushkin book of his works. And sometimes when I have a free couple of minutes, I like to open it because it's quite an immersive, interesting reading. But also to truly immerse myself in that atmosphere, what these people lives looked like, what they thought. And just yesterday I opened this book, I perused through the pages, and I found a poem. Everyone, at least the Russian part of the audience, knows the poem of Mikhail Lermontov-Borodino, Please Tell Me, Uncle. We wasted no time, of course, but I never understood that Pushkin wrote on the same subject as well. But then I took a look at it and I was very impressed by it, because you get a feeling like Alexander Pushkin wrote those very same lines just yesterday, as if he looked at me and said, "Oh, you're about to discuss the Valdai Club. Please take it with you so you can read it aloud to everyone there, my thoughts on the matter." So I was hesitant to do it. But if you allow me, I have a book with me. It's quite curious. This is a response to many questions. The Borodino anniversary. The great day of Borodino. Remembering the brotherhood, we said a lot of troops went threatening Russia with death. The whole Europe was there, and whose star was leading it on? But we stood firmly on the ground, took bullets to the chest, and the unjust argument was then fair. And then their shameful fleeing, they forgot. They forgot our arms, our snow that buried their fame in the middle of a desert. Their famous feast is so attractive, and they get drunk on the Slavic blood, but their hangover will be hard, and they will sleep for long on the northern fields. You see, this says it all. Once again, I find proof that Pushkin is our everything. And after that, he went even further on. He was so inspired, but I can tell you exactly where that is, so you can take a look as well. 1831, that's when it was written. So you see, the fact of Russia's presence is inconvenient for a lot of people. So everyone tries to play part in this historic event of inflicting strategic defeat and to, of course, benefit from it, to reap a bit from here, from there, but also to make a convincing gesture. But they will not succeed.
It's an important comparison. Nawrocki, president of Poland, I think the day before yesterday, as he was...
The poem goes on about Poland.
He mentioned in an interview that he keeps talking to General Pilsudski, discussing issues of relations with Russia, and you speak with Pushkin. There's no harmony in it.
You see, Pilsudski was such a personality who was harboring animosity towards Russia, and under his leadership and under the leadership of his ideas, Poland has made a lot of mistakes between the First and Second World War, because Germany proposed peaceful resolution on the Danzig corridor issue, and the Polish leadership refused to do it. and then fell as the first victim of Nazi aggression. And they also fully recused the following idea. I believe historians are aware of it, that Poland fully refused Soviet Union helping Czechoslovakia. Soviet Union was prepared to do it. We have documents here in Russia. I took a look at them myself, of notes being written to Poland. And Poland said that there would be no way it could lead Soviet troops to Czechoslovakia. And if Soviet planes would fly over, then Poland would strike them down. And then it fell as the first victim of the Nazi aggression. So if this political family of the highest rank in Poland remembers that fact, understanding all the complexities and the intrinsities of historical eras, and takes that into account and truly considers those mistakes, then it could be beneficial.
I have a suspicion that you had a different context. Okay, further questions, please. Professor Marandi from Iran.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Mr. President, and I thank Valdai as well for this excellent conference. We are all saddened because during the last 2 years we've seen genocide in Gaza and the pain and suffering of women and children being torn apart day and night. Recently we saw President Trump give a peace proposal that looked more like a submission and capitulation, and especially introducing someone like Blair with his history is insult to injury. I was wondering, what do you think the Russian Federation can do to bring an end to this misery, which has really darkened the days of everyone? Thank you.
The situation in Gaza, it's truly a horrific event in the modern history of humanity. And it's even known how the Western-oriented UN General Secretary Guterres said that it has turned into the largest children's cemetery in the world. What could be more tragic or sadder? As for the President Trump's proposal on Gaza, you see, perhaps it would be surprising, but Russia is ready to support it. Of course, after taking a detailed look at this proposal, if it leads to the final goal we have continuously spoken about, Russia has continuously, since 1948 and in 1974, when the subsequent resolution of the UN Security Council was introduced, advocated for the creation of two states, of Israel and Palestine. That is the key to the final resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And it's true, I haven't taken a close look at this proposal just yet, but I believe it is proposed to create an international body that would govern for a certain time over Palestine or the Gaza band. And Mr. Blair should be at the head of it. He's quite known to be a peacekeeper. I personally know him. I've visited his home. I've slept over there. We drank coffee in pajamas in the morning together. Was the coffee good? Yes, quite decent. You see, he has his own opinions, but he's an experienced politician. And overall, if you direct his action in the peaceful track, his experience, his knowledge, he could play a positive role. Of course, there are certain questions. How long this international administration would be in power? And then how and who will transfer this power. There is a mention of transfer of power to the Palestinian administration. In my opinion, everything should be handed over to President Abbas and the current administration of Palestine. Perhaps it could be an issue trying to solve security concerns, but as far as I understand from the colleagues who spoke to me about it today, there is a possibility of transfer of control over the Gaza band to the local militia in order to ensure security. Is that really such a bad idea? I believe that is good. We just have to understand how long the international administration will reign there. What is the time frame previewed in order to pass over the civilian power, as well as any security issues? And what is especially important, I believe, which has to be supported. There was a mention of liberating all the hostages that Hamas is keeping, as well as liberating a lot of Palestinians from the Israeli prisons. Here we have to understand how many Palestinians can be released in what time frame, and especially what is especially important, what is Palestine's opinion on that, as well as the countries of that region, the whole Islamic world, and Palestine, Palestinian people, and of course I mean Hamas. There are different approaches and opinions about Hamas. We have our own opinion, but we have contacts with them. And it's important for us that Hamas support that idea as well. And the Palestinian administration has to support that as well. These are all the matters that require substantive, detailed research and work. Overall, if we manage to make it happen, this will be a significant step forward towards resolving this conflict. But in our opinion, I would like to reiterate, any substantive decision can be made with the creation of Palestinian state. And Israel's approach is also very important. We're not aware of it yet. What's their take on it? I'm not aware of any public statements. But it's not just about their public statements, but at the core, what is Israel's take on it? Will they be ready to comply with what's been proposed by the U.S. president? There are a lot of matters to take into account. But overall, if all the things that I've mentioned can happen, it will be a breakthrough that could be quite positive. Allow me to repeat for the third time. The creation of a Palestinian state is the key to resolution as a whole.
I'm not surprised a couple of weeks ago when one ally of the U.S., Israel, attacked another ally of the U.S., Qatar.
I was surprised.
What about the reaction or the absence of reaction of the U.S.?
Понятно. Спасибо. Так, Тара Рид, пожалуйста, здесь.
Okay, Tara Reid.
President Putin, it's a tremendous honor to speak to you. I want to start with a thank you that will lead to the question. I used to work for Senator Biden and Leon Panetta in the United States of America, and I came forward about some things in corruption in 2020, and I was targeted by the Biden regime to the point where I had to flee. Margarita Semignon, who was a hero to me, helped me, and Masha Maria Butina get through. And I was able to get political asylum thanks to you. and with your collective effort, you saved my life. So thank you. I was a target, and my life was in immediate danger. What I can say about Russia is Lublyo Russia. I have found it to be beautiful. The propaganda in the West was wrong about Russia. I love Moscow. The people have been very warm and welcoming. It's efficient. And for the first time, I feel safe and I feel more free. I work for RT, and I've really enjoyed it. I'm given a lot of creative freedom to work in my sphere in geopolitical analysis. And so thank you to the Valdai Club for recognizing my intellectual pursuits. I appreciate you. So this is my question. I have met other Westerners that have come here for sanctuary to Russia, also for economic reasons and for shared values. How do you feel about watching this stream of Westerners coming in, asking to live in Russia, and will it be easier to get Russian citizenship? And you gave me, by presidential decree, Russian citizenship, which is a tremendous responsibility and honor. So, я русский. Спасибо большое.
Вы сказали о...
You've mentioned common values and how we treat people who come from different countries wanting to live here, who share these common values with us. You see, in our political culture, there have been a lot of good, a lot of questionable, and the identification document of citizens of the Russian Empire. There was no such field as nationality. Soviet passport had that, but the Russian one didn't have that. It had a religion. There was a common value, a religious value, belonging to Eastern Christian religion, Orthodox religion. Of course, there were other values, but this was the one that determined what kind of values you shared, which is why today it doesn't matter whether someone comes from the East, from the West, but if they share our values, this is our person, and that's how we're going to treat you, which is why you feel the way you feel. And that's my attitude as well. As for any legal administrative procedures, we have taken decisions that facilitate the chances for those who want to tie their lives, whether it's for a few years, facilitate the process that lowers the barriers for them. It's not that we see a huge inflow, but hundreds of thousands of people, or I believe we've received 2,000 applications, 1,800, and this inflow continues. And it's not just for political reasons, but for values, mostly from European countries. Their gender terrorism that they're conducting towards children. Not a lot of people can tolerate it. So they're trying to find safe havens, and they find themselves here. And we will continue to support them as far as we can. You've also mentioned, I've taken note, I love Russia. You and I have a lot of common. You said I love Moscow. And we have a lot of common because I love Moscow as well. So let's operate on that.
For someone born in St. Petersburg, that's worth a lot. That's a revolutionary event. Mr. President, to follow up on that question, a couple of months ago, there was this really unique piece of news that at the front lines of the special military operation in Donbass, an American citizen perished who fought on our side, Michael Gloss, who was the son of the deputy head of the CIA. An American already attracts attention, especially from such a family. Were you aware of him prior to when it has become known publicly?
No, I was not aware of it. I found out when there was a draft decree on him acquiring a medal for bravery. And I will be very frank, I was quite surprised. He had complicated parents. His mother is the acting deputy of the investigative branch of the U.S. His father is the retired Navy officer in charge of one of the largest companies supplying Pentagon. So it's not your usual family. I was not aware of any of that. But you see, a colleague was just speaking about her points of view, how she found herself here, and he found himself here for the very same reasons. When he tried to enter the university, his parents were not aware. He came to Turkey, then he came to Moscow. He came to the inscription office, and he says that he shares the same values as Russia: human rights, person's right to his own language, to his own religion. He advocates for human rights. And Russia fights for the very same values. And he's ready and he wants to fight for those values with an arm in his hands. He received special preparation. He wasn't just conscripted in the armed forces, but in the elite branch of armed forces, in the air defense forces. Of course, they're all fighters. He was fighting at the forefront. And he fought courageously. He was heavily wounded. He received a strike wound together with his friend in battle. Another friend pulled them out of a burning vehicle, receiving 25% of burns across his body. He pulled them out, carried them to the woods, and just imagine this young man of 22 years old, bleeding out himself, tried to provide first aid to his friend who was wounded. Unfortunately, Ukrainian UAV noticed them, launched a mine, and both were killed. I believe that these people, they are the core of the MAGA organization who support the current Trump administration because they fight for the same values as himself. They are like that, and he's like that as well. What's that they sing in the anthem? The U.S. is the land of the brave. So he truly proved with his bravery, with his behavior, he laid down his life. And a significant part of U.S. citizens can be proud of him. How this U.S. citizen that we just spoke about, I've handed over this medal to Mr. Witkoff, and when we did that, I've asked to come, and they did come, his brothers in battle, and the head of the air defense forces, as well as the brigade commander, the commander of the group, the very same officer who took him out of the burning vehicle, and who, just as I've mentioned, were basically wounded. 25% of his skin was burnt. And then he recovered and he went back to the battlefield, by the way. So yes, just recently, at the initiative of the Donetsk People's Republic Initiative, one of the schools in Donbass was awarded the name of the American and Russian soldier. That is the school with specialization in English language, and we will do everything so it stays in great condition, as well as other schools in Donbass. We will give all our special attention to it. So that's the kind of person we are talking about. His family and the country who supports his points of view can be proud of him.
Anton Khlopkov.
And overall, I've spoken about people of different nationalities who consider themselves Russian soldiers. Despite being American, he was a Russian soldier.
If I may, let's continue the American topic. You mentioned the attempts to kick Russia out of the global markets, the global system. In recent weeks, we hear all those calls from Washington to China, to India, to other countries, and they're putting pressure on them so that those countries would abandon the idea of purchasing Russian raw materials, energy resources. At the same time, you were saying how important it was to get united and about the experience of interaction between Russia and the US and how we need to restore full-scale relations. Necessity to restore full-scale relations between Russia and the US. And this week, to the surprise of many analysts and observers who daily deal with nuclear energy, there was this stats published according to which Russia is the largest supplier of enriched uranium for the nuclear fuel in the US. Considering the current format and level of bilateral Russia-US political relations, what's your assessment of the prospects of interaction between Russia and the US in this field in terms of supplying enriched uranium and in nuclear energy in general? Thank you.
Yes, I will speak about the possible tariff limitations on the trade of US with our partners, with our trade partners with China, with India and other states. We are aware that they have counselors who, in their administrations, that this is the right economic policy. There are experts in the US as well who question it. We have a lot of people here who question whether this will harbor any beneficial results. What is the root of the problem? And there is a problem. For example, let's imagine there are higher tariffs on the goods from those countries that Russia sells energy carriers to, oil and gas. What will this lead to? For example, Chinese goods will be less present, and then prices will go up on these goods on the US market.
Or these goods will flow via third countries, and once again, prices will go up because of the deficit, and the logistics will cost more. If this happens, if the price is ramped up, the Federal Reserve will have to maintain the interest rates flat or up them to deter the inflation, and this will result in the deceleration of the American economy. It's not about politics, it's like a pure economic reckoning, and many of our economists believe it's going to happen. Same refers to India and goods manufactured there. It's the same as with China. So for the United States, the benefit is not obvious, and for the countries against which the threat was voiced, like for India, if India stops buying our energy, damage will be inflicted upon them, like to $9 to $10 billion if they decline to buy energy from us. If not, high duties will be imposed on them, and once again, damage will be there. Well, the same amount of damage, and why then decline to buy Russian energy to actually sustain political risks? And the Indian people will look at what decisions are made by the political leadership and never accept any humiliation before anyone. And also I know Prime Minister Modi, he will never take any steps of the kind. So economy-wise, there is no point in it. With respect to uranium, well, it is actually kind of type of fuel. This is also type of energy for nuclear power plants. And in this case, a nuclear power plant is no different from those coal firing or furnace oil firing, etc., to generate power. And the United States buys uranium from us. And you've asked, why does it buy uranium from us and bans others to buy our energy? The answer is simple, and it was given back in the times of the Roman Empire. We all know the phrase, quod licet Jovi, non licet bovi. What is allowed to Jupiter is not allowed to Bull. Neither China nor India, even if we recall that in India cow is sacred, they venerate the cow. No one wants to act as a bull. However, in Europe, many of the politicians want to act as a bull or a goat or a ram. Will not point fingers, but this is not about China. It's not the case of India or China or any other major powers or mid-sized nations who respect themselves and will not allow to be humiliated. Well, as regards trading in uranium, this continues, and the United States is the number one, I think, power in terms of nuclear generation. I don't remember the exact number. Probably they have 54 power plants, NPPs. But in the overall energy mix, it accounts for 18.7% only. I mean the nuclear power. We produce and generate less. We have fewer units, but in our energy mix it's also 18.5%, roughly the same proportion. But in the United States, they have a well-developed nuclear power sector, and it requires a lot of fuel. We are not number one supplier. You said we're the biggest supplier. No, this is not true. The biggest supplier is an American-European company, I forget its name, supplying 60% of nuclear fuel to the American market. And Russia is number two. supplying around 25% of uranium. Last year, I cannot recall the exact numbers of supplies, but we earned around 750 or 60 million USD. In the first half of this year, we sold uranium worth more than $800 million to the United States. So more than $800 million worth of uranium. And as a result of the year, it's going to be 1.2 billion, more or less. So we can figure how much is going to be next year. Now we have had the backlog of orders to the tune of around 800 million. So the work is ongoing. And well, they do that because it's the cost-effective option for them, and they're right in doing so. And we are ready to be a reliable supplier.
I took note that for the next Valdai Discussion Club, we need a session dedicated to livestock, about rams, sheep.
Well, this is a very important matter. Yes, don't hesitate. Don't doubt that. If we step aside from the irony, probably you have caught the irony. But if we speak about the energy trade, the refusal to buy Russian gas in Europe has resulted in the growth of price, and the gas-based fertilizers production has become non-profitable in Europe, and the enterprises closed down, and the price of the fertilizers has gone up, and that impacted the agriculture, and the food prices have gone up also, which reduced the living standards in Europe. This is why people take to the streets.
Mr. Putin, and let's leave alone the nuclear topic. And over the last week, a lot has been written about the situation in Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, that there is a threat of a major failure that would actually damage all the regions nearby. What is going on there?
Well, all the things that have been happening keep happening. The Ukrainian militants try to impact the surroundings of the NPP. Thank goodness they haven't got the nerve to impact the station itself. There were some strikes against the training center. Several days ago, just shortly before Grossi came to visit us, there was an artillery strike impacting the power transmission towers, and now the feed in is provided with the help of generators. And so these transmission lines should be brought in order, should be repaired, and they're within the reach of the Ukrainian artillery. This is the difficulty. And this artillery keeps pounding, and our repair brigades cannot approach this site, and they keep telling everyone that we've been doing that, not them. And Mr. Grossi visited that, and the staff members of IAEA keep silent. They're shy of what has been happening, but they're not blind. They see what has been happening. Do we strike ourselves? This is nonsense. This is a very dangerous game, actually. And on that side, people should be aware of that. If they keep playing these dangerous games, they still have operating nuclear power plants on their side, and we can reciprocate, respond in kind, let them think it over. Number two, well, around 10,000 people worked at that power plant in the Ukrainian times, because all the social things were on the payroll, on their budget. Now 4.5 thousand people work there full-time, and only 250 came from other regions of Russia. All the rest, the bulk, the vast majority, are the staff members that have been there for quite long. Some of the people, some of the workers left, and no one expelled them, and no one detains those who want to live there and work there. And they have accepted the Russian nationality, as well as our colleague has done. And all that is happening and is witnessed by the observers of the IAEA who are present at the power plant. And this is how things are progressing, are happening there. And we try to, well, by and large, this is under control, and we try to provide for the security of the nuclear power plant and the fuel. But I can only add that the sabotage squads of the Ukrainian army last month and last year repeatedly tried to blow up the power transmission lines near the Kursk and Smolensk nuclear power plants, trying to, well, our professionals restored power supply quickly, but what has been happening now at the Zaporozhye power plant is no different from the activities by those terrorist squads. This is very dangerous. Well, they'd better stop that. I hope this message is brought home to those who are in charge. So Grossi knows what has been happening. Yes, he does, and he knows that. Like a UAV drops a shell, or a shell comes. So do we strike ourselves from the Ukrainian territory? This is ridiculous.
Gabor Stirtan, over to you. Thank you so much, Mr. Putin. Thank you for sharing with us your Russian view and your personal view about the world, about the future world order and the current world order. I'm from Hungary, from the country that today very often is being said a black sheep of Europe. The last several days at the Valdai Discussion Club, we were addressing many questions as to what is going on in the world. We discussed it whether the West is prepared for such a rearrangement or restructuring, and what place it can take in the nascent world order. And by the way, we were speaking about the deplorable state of the European Union, or Europe. I think, and many in Hungary share that point of view, and they ask what would happen to the European Union, because it is not clear whether the EU would stay, would remain, or will it collapse. Its future is not clear. Many believe that the last nails into the coffin of the EU would be driven by the integration of Ukraine. What do you think? Do you share that point of view that the EU now is in deep crisis? What is your attitude towards that situation? And speaking about whether Ukraine is going to accede to the European Union, recently you said that Russia is not against that. Many do not understand that. I understand that once Ukraine is accepted as a member of the EU, then the EU would become weaker, and a weak EU is beneficial for many. But if Europe is too weak, it would pose a risk, it would pose a threat for the Eurasian space. Second, the EU lately looks very much like NATO. If we look at how we treat the Ukrainian crisis, it becomes very clear. My point is that so the European Union fist in that fight would be Ukraine, it would be its ram, and once it becomes the member of the European Union, it would threaten Russia. What is your take on that?
Well, first of all, the European Union originally, since the founders, and the Commonwealth of Coal and Steel developed as an economic group. I said publicly already, but I will indulge in recalling once again that in 1993, together with the then mayor of St. Petersburg, Mr. Sobchak, I accompanied him, and he had a meeting with the then Chancellor, Federal Chancellor Kohl, and Kohl said if Europe wanted to preserve itself as one of the standalone centers of global civilization, it should act in concert with Europe, and Russia and the EU would be mutually complementary in a most powerful way. Well, actually, we actually both built on the traditional values, and back then they were respected in Europe. They held in high esteem in Europe, and with respect to today, just it's my general assessment. I have already made myself clear, and I have recalled Pushkin. Well, anyway, this is a very powerful group or alliance with huge potential and with a huge capability. But, you know, it has been ebbing away and abating at the same time. It's not that the main powerhouse of Europe, Germany, has been stagnating for a number of years, and it's projected that they will keep stagnating next year. It's not that the French economy has been faced with a great deal of challenges and fiscal deficits and a growing debt burden, but rather it's about the fact that them fundamental things that have to do with the European identity are fizzling out. This is the erosion from within. The uncontrolled migration flows erode them. You know better than me. Europe, whether Europe should be a union of nations or a quasi-state, it's none of our business. It's up to the Europeans to decide, but one way or another, they should have the underpinning values in place. If they disappear, Europe, that we love dearly, also would disappear. We have very many liberal people from the creative and intellectual communities, and these are the West lovers and advocates, and they believe that we should tilt towards the West. But even they have been telling me in private that the Europe that we cherished and loved dearly is gone. I will not call their names. They're very well-known people in this country. These are European intellectuals in the full sense of the word, and they stay half a year in Europe in a year, and the Europe that we loved and cherished is gone, they say. So this is because of the erosion of the underpinning values. If that keeps happening, well, Europe will gradually shrink and shrivel and lose its power, and the erosion of the foundation of values will give rise to the economic problems. If things go as they proceed, their sovereignty, values-based sovereignty, will be gone, will be lost, and the economic challenges crop up. We've just discussed that uranium, which is a type of energy. You may supply that to the United States, but you can't supply gas and oil to Europe. Why so? No, you can't. Because they have their own considerations. What kind of considerations? Unless they focus on their national interests, they can come up with dozens of arguments. But if they're guided by their own national interests and remain sovereign, they have no grounds. And once the sovereignty is lost, everything will collapse like a house of cards. Currently, some political forces are gaining momentum in Europe that cater to the national interests in France and Germany and Hungary, headed by Viktor Orban, who has been at helm for quite long. So I haven't been following their domestic political developments, but I'll bet the majority of the Hungarians want to remain Hungarians and will support Orban. Otherwise, they'll support von der Leyen if they don't want to remain Hungarians. So, if the forces that I've mentioned in Europe have been gathering pace, Europe will be revived, but that depends not on us but on Europe. Mr. President, you know, these days, off the shores of France, an oil-filling tanker was seized. They have demonstrated their sovereignty. So sooner or later, that is related to Russia, although the flag is different. This is piracy, filibusterism. Well, the tanker has been seized in neutral waters without any grounds. Probably they were seeking some military cargoes like the UAVs or other items. It had none and couldn't have had. And the tanker sailed under a third country flag, and there was an international crew. I'm not sure whether that was related to Russia, but you know, this fact has happened. And what is that? And is that important for France? Well, it is, depending. Well, given the very, very difficult domestic political situation, and the French political leadership can, in no other way, distract the attention of the people from the challenges that are hard to resolve inside the Republic. So this is why they want to pass the buck and move the focus to the borderline and egg on different countries like Russia and provoke us so that we act actively and tell the French people, join me and close ranks around me. I'll lead you to victory like Napoleon. But actually, this is the gist of it.
I believe you've been too kind towards the President of France. You know, I do it gladly. We have strictly working relationship, but what is happening right now is exactly as I've told you. I have no doubt. I know him well.
Van Shauli. from the Center of Russian Studies in Shanghai. Mr. President, I'm really glad to see you once again. I totally agree with you, with your point of view. We need to get back to classical diplomatic approaches. It's time. But in recent months and a half, you successfully finished two important official visits. First of all, Russian-American summit in Alaska, and the second one was with the SCO and then the military parade in Beijing. So let me ask you this. What are the specific results of those summits? And what's the importance of those visits? Is there any connections there? Are there any results that would help us to improve the international situation? Thank you.
First of all, you've started with a visit to the United States, to Alaska. We haven't discussed with Mr. Trump of any kind of bilateral matters. We've only spoken about the means and ways of resolving the Ukrainian crisis. I believe overall it's a great result, and the President Trump, we've known each other for a long time. And of course he likes to speak, and everyone sees it. But it's also the kind of person who can truly listen, who can hear what you're saying. He responds to what you're saying. So he's quite a comfortable person to speak to. And us attempting to search and find possible ways of resolving the Ukrainian crisis is quite significant. And that was the first point. The second point, even though we've just breached it attemptively, it's the U.S. and Russian relations that are not at a dead end, but it's at quite an early stage. And the very fact of our meeting, of this visit, and I'm very grateful to the President for organizing it, I believe it's all signs that lead to the restoration of bilateral relations, and that is great for us in the bilateral scope, but for the international community as a whole. And now approaching my visit to China, when we have spoken with my friend, I believe that the President of China is my dear friend. We have established very friendly, trustworthy relations. He told me that himself, that we in China, and he didn't say that for the whole world to hear, he said that to me personally, that we welcome the reestablishment and restoration of U.S.-Russian relations, and we will try to assist it in any way possible. But of course my visit to the Chinese People's Republic was wider in a scope, because together we've celebrated the end of the Second World War. The result of this joint fight of Russia and China. Russia, first of all, on the track of combating Nazism, and then, of course, together combating the Japanese militarism, have contributed significantly. I've also already mentioned it. Just look at the colossal sacrifices that Russia and China have made to the altar of this victory. And secondly, of course, on our side, as well as from China when he came to celebrate the 9th of May, we stay true to this spirit of allyship. So I believe, in this sense, the visit to China was of global, fundamental nature. And of course this allowed us on the sidelines of these events to discuss the world situation, to compare our points of view on the development of bilateral relations in the humanitarian, cultural, educational areas. For next year and forward, we've decided to announce the years of education. And that speaks for the fact that we want to work. We work and we will continue to work with the youth. This is the future outlook. That is why this visit was so important. And some initiatives of the Chinese president on the global governance, they align with our ideas of Eurasian security, to compare our notes, because this was truly of global nature, not just bilateral nature. So I highly assess the results of that visit. And I believe this was another important step forward in the development of our relations.
Mr. President, you are the first leader in the world who called Trump a comfortable person to talk to.
You see, I speak from the heart. As I've already mentioned, of course he likes using big words and speaking point blank and just directly tackling the issue. But he's, as I've already mentioned, protecting his national interests as he sees fit. But sometimes it's easier to hear a direct approach, to understand, instead of ambiguous phrasings. And I'm not saying it just to pay a compliment. We've talked for an hour and a half. I've presented my position and he listened attentively. He did not interrupt me. Then I listened to him very closely. We've exchanged our opinions. These are very complex issues. I will not go into detail because we don't do that. But he said that this will be complicated. Yes, of course. Obviously. We started to go into certain details. We have discussed them. There was a discussion. There was a discussion. I believe you should do this, you should do that, take off your hat. No. There was none of that. Of course, it is important that this leads to a logical conclusion, that there are definite results, but it is a complicated process. And I say that constantly, that it's important to reach a balance of interests, to reach a consensus. It is difficult. But if we approach this, and if we reach those results during the discussion, then these are truly tremendous agreements, and we can hope that they're long-lasting.
Did you tell him anything about the history of Ukraine?
No, that's not funny. I've spoken about this with my other American colleagues. We've truly discussed of possible ways of resolution. We've been quite frank. We've spoken honestly. It's hard to predict what will come out of it. But we will continue. We're ready to continue this discussion.
Whose idea was it to meet in Alaska?
Does it really matter? The important thing is that we did meet. But we were comfortable in Alaska. You see, they still have Orthodox presence there. They have Orthodox churches. People come to services, and the services are delivered in English. And for certain commemorative events, once that English service is over, the father, just addressing the Russian community, says the word, "I congratulate you," in Russian, and everyone responds in Russian as well. It's a true testament.
Mr. President, you mentioned economic sanctions against Russia. There is an unprecedented number of them. You just spoke about Orthodox churches and our patriarch, Cyril. Also, there were sanctions imposed against him. Our economy survived. It showed that it was quite resistant as it comes to sanctions, and our friends and our opponents were surprised at the resilience of our economy. We'll have to live with sanctions for decades, if not more. How would you assess their impact on our economy, and what do we need to do to make sure our economy is resilient in the long run?
It's true, I've mentioned it in my address. That our path hasn't been an easy way. It has been a responsible one. We've tried to raise the level of our independence and sovereignty, of economic sovereignty, financial sovereignty. What have we done? First of all, we have significantly changed our main trade partners. We have reshaped the logistics of work with our partners. We have changed the payment system. And all of this is functioning. But in today's world, it's not enough. We have to pay more attention to solving other issues, and first and foremost is the further diversification of our economy. It has to be modernized. It has to use more high technology. We have to restructurize the work market, how to pay all of these workers. We have to use more high technology. We have to raise the effectiveness of that work. And it means that higher salaries paid to higher qualified personnel. But we also have paid more attention to those who earn less, because people who earn less, who earn more, they spend more money on domestic products, which means the growth for our local markets. Of course, we can reinforce our financial system. And here it's important to achieve two results. First of all, we need to continue reinforcing our macroeconomic stability, lowering the inflation. But at the same time, we need to preserve the positive speed of economic growth. We've achieved 4.3%, which is much larger than international figures. But at the end of last year, we've said that in order to defeat the inflation, we have to unfortunately sacrifice the record-setting growth rate, which is why the central bank lowered the key rate, which affects the economy. We will conduct the events that have to do with the forced freezing of the economy, but we will sacrifice this growth in order to restore the macroeconomic figures so that the economy stays healthy as a whole. So there are a lot of government-made decisions about the taxation, about the added value, and it's important not to allow for the shade economy to take over. So these are the key goals in short term. Those are just fundamental points. As for our economy, our relatively small external debt and relatively low budget deficit. This year it was 2.6. Next year we plan for 1.6. At the same time, the debt load is, the state debt is lower than 20%, which allows us to assume that even if the added value will raise, which of course will affect the economic growth, and we understand that because all the taxation affects the economy, but this will also allow us to find a better balance for the central bank when it comes to dealing with economic issues with key rate, but also for the government when it comes to expenditure budget, when they set their own parameters, creating conditions for further development. So all of this in complex allows us, first of all, to assume that we have come a long and winding road, but at the same time gives us reassurance that not only have we passed this stage, but we have enough reason and enough means to continue moving forward.
Alexander Kuich. Mr. President, my name is Alexander Akovic. I'm a historian from Serbia, Belgrade. And my question is as follows. What do you think about the attempts to stage colored revolution in Serbia?
I agree with President Vučić, but our secret services confirm that certain Western centers take attempts to organize these color revolution in Serbia. You see, there are always people, especially young people, who don't understand much about current issues, who don't know enough of history of these issues and the consequences that the illegitimate forms of shift of power lead to, especially the color revolution. What did the color revolution in Ukraine lead to? I believe everyone understands that. These revolutions are unconstitutional, illegitimate seizure of power, to speak frankly. Usually it doesn't lead to anything good. Usually it's easier to stay true to the law, to the Constitution. As for the effect on the youth, it's usually the easiest ways to affect the minds of the youth, which is why I've spoken about our young girls and young guys who use the Russian symbols when they wear them in public, when they're carrying that with pride. This is the basis of the self-identity and the protection from the external pressure. And the youth in Serbia, even those who go outside, they're patriots at their core. And it's important to continue dialogue with them. They should never forget how much suffering the Serbian people have gone through before the First World War, during the First World War, after that, ahead of the Second and during the Second World War. The Serbian people have suffered a lot, and those who push the youth on the streets want their people to continue suffering, just as they want the Russian people to suffer, and they're speaking openly about it. Perhaps they're not being open about it in Serbia, but that's probably what they're thinking. So all these messages that you will go forward, you will dethrone someone, and they say that everything will be okay. Nobody ever says what kind of okay that is. How will it be? What the price for that will be. They stay silent about those things. And usually it leads to the reversed result, to the exact opposite of what people expect. But I believe if you conduct a proper dialogue with these young people, you can find common ground with them. Because first and foremost, they're patriots, and they should understand what's better for their country. All these revolutionary changes, or gradual changes with their participation, But that's not our matter. That is the internal affair of Serbia.
Do you have good relationship with President Vucic now? There were some complaints about Serbian colleagues.
I have good relations with everyone, and with Mr. Vucic as well.
Здравствуйте, Владимир Владимирович. Меня зовут Адиль Каукер.
Mr. Putin, my name is Adil Kilkenov. I'm a doctoral student of the Beijing University of Language and Culture. Let me go back to your visit to China. There's this big news now that China introduced a visa-free regime for the Russian citizens, and you can see that in Beijing. How do you assess this measure? Is Russia ready for the reciprocal measure for Chinese citizens to come to Russia?
As for our responsive steps, I've already mentioned this in Beijing. We will mirror these steps. Just recently, I've spoken with our Minister of Foreign Affairs, who said, we've already done it. No, just let me check back on that. So you see, bureaucracy works the same way in every country. So if we haven't done it yet, we will be sure to do it. The announcement on the visa-free entry of Russian citizens into the territory of the Chinese People's Republic was unexpected. It was the initiative of the Chinese president. As for the consequences, I believe they will be nothing but positive, because the basis of interstate relations is created first and foremost on the human level, and the number of people who will visit China with different purposes, for tourism purposes, for scientific research, for educational purposes, will far exceed that we're witnessing today. And of course, the same will be in return. First of all, it will apply to tourists who will take a look at Chinese life, and vice versa, Chinese tourists who will get acquainted with life in Russia. I believe these are things of fundamental value. We always welcome them, and we will continue to assist on that track.
General Sharma, over here, please.
Mr. President, we are keenly looking forward to your visit to India in December. And my question is, what would be the strategic focus of your visit to India? How will it result into deepening the bilateral relations and also collaboration regionally and internationally?
Our relations with India are of special nature ever since the Soviet Union, and since the days where the Indian people fought for their independence. India knows, remembers, appreciates that, and we appreciate the fact that India never forgets that. And so our relations are developing. I believe we will celebrate 15 years since our announcement of the specialized, strategic, privileged partnership. And India and Russia never had any issues of interstate nature, any differences. Prime Minister Modi is a very reasonable, wise leader. He's very oriented in the interests of his nation, and everyone in India knows that. So now our priority is to build effective, mutually beneficial trade ties. Trade turnover with India is $63 billion US. So 1.5 billion people live in India, and in Belarus there are 10. And with Belarus we have $50 billion US and 63 with India. I believe this doesn't align with our potential, with our capabilities, so we have to resolve a number of matters so that we can unblock our full potential. And first and foremost, we have to deal with the logistics. Second of all, we need to deal with the financing, with the payments. And there is room for work, and there are opportunities for that. We can do that within the BRICS instruments on bilateral basis, using rupees, using the third country currencies, using the electronic payment means. These are the things that need to be discussed. We have a trade disbalance with India. We are aware of it. We recognize it. And together with our Indian friends and partners, we're thinking of ways to perfect this trade turnover. Just recently, I gave another order to the government, to the co-president of the Intergovernmental Commission, Mr. Manturov, so that together with his colleagues, he could think of the ways to develop these trade and economic ties. And so now the Russian government is working on it and will continue to put forward subsequent steps to our Indian colleagues. As for political relations, our contacts on the international stage, we usually convert our actions, align them, and we always hear our position, the position of our friends, take it into account, and our ministries of foreign affairs are working closely. And the same applies to the humanitarian area. Here in Russia, we have a lot of students. We love Indian cinema. I've already spoken about it. It's probably the only country in the world that, other than India, we have a separate channel that streams Indian movies days and nights. And we also have very trustworthy relations in the security area. Joint production of very modern perspective types of arms, which once again underscores the kind of trust that's been built between our countries. And I also am looking forward to my trip in early December, and I highly await my meeting with my dear friend, with our trustworthy partner, with Prime Minister Modi.
Thank you. Anatol Livin over here.
Craft in Washington. Thank you very much, Mr. President, for coming to see us. Recently, there has been public discussion in the West of two serious potential escalations. The supply of Tomahawk cruise missiles to Ukraine and the potential seizure of ships with Russian cargoes on the high seas, not just in ports and territorial waters. Could you give us your view of the dangers of this and perhaps say something about how Russia would respond? Thank you.
It's dangerous. As for the Tomahawks, it's a powerful arm. Perhaps not the most modernized, but it's powerful. Poses serious threat. This will not change in any way the balance of powers on the battlefield, the fundamental issues of the armed forces of Ukraine, no matter how many UAVs they get, and no matter how many lines they create with those UAVs. Without the personnel, there will be no one to lead those battles. They have to change the tactics. Just look at what they're showing on the TV screens about how our troops are moving. 2, 3 people, but they're moving. RAP is working, so they'll continue step by step to move forward. Yes, of course there has been damage, but the Russian air defense systems have adjusted, have started striking them down. Can tomahawks inflict damage? Yes, but we will continue to strike them down. We will continue to perfect our systems. Will this pose damage to our relations? Where we see light at the end of the tunnel, of course. Of course. Using tomahawks without direct involvement of the U.S. officers is impossible. Which means a brand new stage of escalation, even in the relations between Russia and the U.S. As for the seizure of ships, that's not good. That's piracy. What do we do with pirates? They have to be destroyed. There is no other way to deal with them. But it doesn't mean that overnight a war will start in the world ocean. But the risk of clash and confrontation will arise. At the example of the French Republic, I believe that is what will happen. That is what's happening. This mudding of waters and this stirring up of the situation and this continuing of rising level of escalation is nothing but an attempt to distract the attention of their citizens from the growing issues inside those countries. And that is what they're attempting to do. They are awaiting a response from our side. It immediately changes the track of political attention. SOS, we're being attacked. Who is attacking us? Russia. Everyone should stand strong together in order to unite against this common enemy. That is their common goal. And the citizens of those countries should be aware that that is the goal. They want to lead them astray, trying to avert them away from protests, especially on the streets. But at the same time, to suppress their civic activity and to stay in power. But the citizens of these countries should understand that this is a high-risk game. They're being pushed on the path of escalation as well as large-scale armed conflicts. I wouldn't do it.
Mr. Putin, you are setting Europe as an example as actually using the external threats for the internal consolidation. But in the United States, quite recently, we saw some high-profile assassination that has been perceived as an internal conflict aimed to polarize the society. Do they need the external threat in order to address that problem? Well, you know, this is a disgusting thing, and moreover, it was done just in the open air, almost a live show, and it was totally disgusting and totally. I'd like to render my condolences to the family of Mr. Kirk and his next of kin, and certainly we sympathize with him. Moreover, he was defending those traditional values, and by the way, the ones that Michael Gloss came to defend with arms in his hands, and he sacrificed his life for that, and he sacrificed his life here in a fight for the traditional values. As a Russian soldier, and Kirk gave his life there in the United States, but fighting for the same values. What is the difference? There is almost no difference. And by the way, the proponents of Kirk in the United States should know that here in Russia we have Americans who are fighting and who are ready to sacrifice their lives for that. But sadly, this is a sign, what has happened, this is a sign of a deep rift in the society, of a chasm in the United States. And there is no need to escalate the situation from outside, because the political leadership of the country tries to set it straight in the domestic policy and don't want to comment on that. This is not our business, but I think that the United States is going this way, although what you have said and what our colleague raised the question about the new high-precision long-range missiles. This is another way to distract the attention from the domestic problems. But at least what I see, still the United States leadership, the US administration actually is more inclined to pursue a different policy, focusing more on achieving national development goals the way they understand it. Thank you so much. Glenn Dissent.
President Putin, thank you so much for sharing your perspectives. My question was about Finland and Sweden having joined NATO. It changes the geopolitical landscape of Europe, and I was wondering how Russia interprets this. That is, the High North, as well as the situation in the Baltic Sea, perhaps specifically on the pressure that Kaliningrad is coming under. And how Russia might respond to this. Thank you.
As for the fleet, I've already mentioned that this could lead to conflict. I would not like to go into details and to give food to those who await our radical discussion. I will say this and that, and then they will start saying that Russia is making threats. We were warning you about this for a long time. And then they will get exactly what they were trying to get, trying to distract the attention from the problems due to the heightened factor of external threat. Of course, we will respond. It's not us who's suspending someone's fleet. Someone is trying to put obstacles on our way. What is the shady fleet? Can anyone speak for what that is exactly? I'm sure that not, because there is no term for that in the international sea law, which means those are unlawful actions, and those who try to do it need to keep that in mind. Secondly, as first for your question, is Sweden and Finland joining NATO? It's nonsense. We had no issues with Sweden or Finland. No issues whatsoever. In Helsinki, you could pay in rubles in any store. People would go into the store and use rubles to pay. In the border regions, they had signs in Russian. They were employing people to work in hotels and shopping malls, people who spoke Russian, because there were a lot of tourists. A lot of our citizens bought houses there. And perhaps some of these countries got a suspicion, or they were afraid that this silent influence of Russia was taking place. But the world is interdependent. If you don't like something and you see any danger in it, take certain economic administrative measures, just limit acquiring of housing. Anything can be solved. But joining NATO, a bloc that is leading an aggressive policy towards Russia, what for? To safeguard what exactly? To protect whose interests? To protect what interests of Finland exactly? Was Russia trying to capture Finland or Stockholm? All that Russia wanted, we've resolved with Sweden after the Poltava battle. That happened a long time ago. We had no more standing issues. We know that Sweden had a different figure of Charles XII, and perhaps he was killed by his own people because he was trying to involve Turkey in another war with Russia, but that was long ago, centuries ago. What kind of issues did we have with Finland? There were no issues. Everything was resolved. All the agreements were signed following the Second World War. So what was the purpose? Were they trying to benefit from the strategic defeat of Russia? I could show a gesture, but I won't do it in the presence of ladies. Finland and Sweden have lost the advantage of neutral status. These negotiations on the possible resolution of Ukrainian crisis. Helsinki Act, why did it right? Why was it called? Because it used to be a neutral country. It was a comfortable spot for meetup. And now who exactly will go to Helsinki? Mr. Stu. Donald has that. He is good at golf. Okay, that's nice, but it's not enough. And I don't want to say anything bad. I love sports myself, but it's not enough. Where is the perspective? What is the advantage? Just name one thing. Perhaps the nationalist part of Finland was afraid that Russia was trying to silently intervene, but just introduce some administrative measures. Why not do it? I've always had good friendly relations with former leaders. They've come here, we've discussed any kind of issues, the transport movement. It was comfortable. But you see, apparently Russia is conducting aggressive politics. It attacked Ukraine. How about the fact that a coup d'etat took place in Ukraine? Did you not take that into account? What about since 2014 they've been killing children in Donbass? Is that okay? That tanks and airplanes were used against the civilians in those cities. Everything was documented. Is that acceptable? They just didn't want to analyze that. All they wanted to do was join the clique that wants to profit off of Russia's sake. Former president, when we spoke on the phone, we had friendly relations, we played hockey together numerous times. He said, Norway's in NATO and nothing is happening to them. Well, yes, nothing good is happening to them. We've negotiated with them on the sea matters, normal relations, but now the border between Russia and NATO is growing bigger. We had no armed forces in that part of Russia, but now there will be. Now we have to create separate military areas. Finland said we will not allow the emergence of arms that is dangerous to Russia, especially nuclear arms. Who the hell knows? Who exactly will ask the Finns for their opinion when making those decisions? I don't want to offend anyone, but I know how those decisions is made. Just leave it be, and what will this lead? Did you hit the hole? Now you will respond for that. So let's station the complexes over there. They will be responsible for this and that. What is the point? Now they're mentioning our aircrafts not using transponder over the Baltic Sea. I've noticed when I visited Helsinki that NATO airplanes never used transponders. And then the Finnish president said, well, let's agree that everyone should use them. Russia agrees. What was the NATO country's response? We will not abide by those rules. This is nothing but the stirring up over another region in the world. And they're threatening the very stability, the military strategic stability in those regions. If there's anything dangerous then we will also station something dangerous there. But what for? Who exactly will benefit from it? Will Finnish security or Swedish security benefit from it? Not at all. So of course we will continue working. If they want to restore relations, we have no objections. But the situation has changed. There is a residue.
Mr. Putin, why are you sending so many drones to Denmark? Don't do that.
I promise I won't do it anymore. Not to Denmark, not to France, not to Copenhagen. Where else are they flying? Lisbon. People are entertaining themselves, and they used to entertain themselves about the UAV, about the unidentified flying vehicles, about the UVFs. And they have a lot of weirdos. We can watch them every day and they can try and catch them. But if we speak seriously, we don't have UAVs that could reach Lisbon. We have long-range ones. But there are no targets there. That's what matters. But that is another way of stirring out the situation in order to respond to the orders of Washington and to raise their expenditures on defense. Although the European economy their situation is complicated. We've spoken about Germany, France. Germany used to be at the forefront of the European economy. And no matter how badly they want it, they can never regain those positions. In short term, it's very complicated, and other countries are losing their positions due to the stagnation of leading economies, due to the high budget deficit, and other macroeconomic figures. I believe I said that we had 2.6. Theirs is 4 or 6 times. So in order to distract the attention from these substantive, deep issues, they try to stir up waters.
I think that you have scared Portugal, Lisbon, and actually the situation there is very dire. Well, it was a joke. By the way, it was a joke.
No, that was not a joke.
Then you are warned that's a very frank thing to do.
If you're warned, you can consider yourself armed. Allow me, let's be democratic. There is a lady over there in a light blouse, please.
Mr. Putin, a few words about the aggression and the global majority. Several times you remembered how BRICS was set up and what is going on there, and what BRICS is trying to achieve. And yet, we hear from our Western colleagues, experts, that BRICS, this is a very aggressive entity Although we and every country individually, we keep saying that our agenda is positive. And we prove to the opposite by all our actions. But nevertheless, still Kazan has been remembered. And this shows actually that our European colleagues are isolated, while speaking that this is Russia which is isolated. There are lots of initiatives. I'd like to thank you for your personal support. Last year we launched the Council of BRICS, and that was a great endeavor. How to make sure that BRICS doesn't lose the momentum, that it increases in the size, and we have many more partners joining BRICS. How to make sure that BRICS justifies the hopes of the global majority. Thank you so much.
That's a rhetorical question. BRICS is expanding and it's good, but we also see new challenges, and you've rightfully drawn attention to it, because the more members there are, the more interests and opinions there are to be taken into account in order to agree on a common position. It becomes more and more difficult, but there is no other way. There is only one way: trying to come to an agreement, taking into account all the interests, and the joint work in that direction. And overall, we've been successful, but BRICS is facing a lot of challenges, a lot of tasks. One of them is to perfect, as we believe, not just create a common platform, common principles of cooperation, first and foremost in the area of economics. I've already mentioned that even when addressing the Valdai Club, we're not trying to build our politics against someone. The whole BRICS politics is aimed at ourselves, at the BRICS members. We're not trying to lead an anti-dollar campaign. Not at all. We're just not being allowed to pay in dollars. So what do we have to do? What else do we have to do? We're going to do what other countries are trying to do, including the US. Trying to allow for an expansion of electronic commerce, electronic payments. We will continue to develop within BRICS, and we continue to do it already. We try to push forward the idea of new investment platforms, where I believe we can expect success on that track. Because as I've mentioned, if we use modern technologies in the payment systems, we can create very unique system that would operate with minimal risks and with practically no inflation. So we can plan the projects that would be mutually beneficial for all the members of the process. But first and foremost, to those where these projects are implemented, and first and foremost, we would like to do it on the fast-growing markets of Africa, South Asia, and they will grow very fast. And their growth rates are already fast, and they will only pick up the pace as of today. If we look at the world GDP, BRICS represents 40% of the world GDP. As for the European Union countries, can only say that it's 23%, and the US is 20%. And that pace is picking up. So the G7 countries 7 years ago and right now, and this tendency continues. And what do we want to do? We want to join this track of development, and together with the major BRICS countries to work on these markets. In Africa, I believe great future awaits them as well. So countries that count 100 million people and more, very rich, South Asia, Southeastern Asia, there are great perspectives of development for humanity. and their countries will strive for the general level of life of these citizens continues to grow, trying to reach that of the states where it's already high today. So it's inevitably going to be a fight to achieve these results. And we want to join this joint positive work. So what about it is aggressive? I believe it's just a stress-induced reaction to our success, as well as a reaction to the further growth of competitors in the world economic affairs. Please, over there, this Mr. raised his hand. Please.
For that very comprehensive presentation, and I think you have answered many of our questions and also cleared doubts. And listening these things from you directly is very, very useful to us, and I want to thank Valdai for giving this opportunity. You mentioned about your forthcoming visit to India, and you also mentioned some projects and some initiatives that might be taken. But I want to refer to one area, and which is the possibilities of cooperation in high technology, emerging technologies. I believe that there is a need for some special focus and special initiatives to enhance our cooperation, deepen our cooperation in artificial intelligence, cyber, and other areas. So would you be thinking of some special steps, like, for instance, setting up a India-Russia technology fund to promote such cooperation? Because unless there is a impetus at the highest levels, these cooperation will take some time. So that is my first question. My second question is that you have also today also spoken about civilization and culture and its importance. In earlier meetings also here you have emphasized this. If you could kindly elaborate, what is the role of civilization and culture in contemporary international politics? Do you see civilizations as bringing cooperation among civilizations possible and bringing stability? Or do you see there are possibilities of clash of civilizations also, as has been predicted by some other scholars some years ago? Thank you very much.
What a complicated question. Allow me to start off with the easier part, with artificial intelligence and other modern developments of our civilization, and on the possibility of creating a fund. Yes, it is possible. I've already said that I've asked the Russian government and the Vice Prime Minister to think of a proposal to our Indian friends and colleagues as for where we see the most prospective areas of cooperation, how we could fix that disbalance in trade. We could acquire more agriculture products, medical products, and more could be done on our side. As for the fund and our cooperation with India and France, there are certain specifications which stem from the fact that the Indian economy is the private economy, and it's developing on the basis of private initiatives. And more often you have to deal not with the state, but directly with the companies. And the state, just like over here, simply regulates these relations. Of course, we need to try on the state level to create conditions for the positive development of relations between the participants of this economic activity, while also working with companies. But the idea in itself is a good one in order to join efforts in the key areas of development. including in the area of developing and using artificial intelligence. We have certain workings that we can pride ourselves for. We have companies that are showing great results. And here, joining our efforts is especially important and is looking very promising. Thank you so much for the idea. So the kind of task that I've set for the government, I will also readjust it a little bit. As for the civilization, the clash of civilizations. As for the ideas of certain specialists towards that, overall, I know of them. I believe that there is an American research specialist who specializes in the issues of the future civilizations, that ideological differences take a step back, and instead, to the surface, there are substantial, fundamental bases of the civilization. And the contradictions that used to exist between the states on the ideological basis, they could now be of civilizational nature. So it's no longer a clash of ideology or a clash of states on the ideological basis, but a clash and confrontation of states due to the civilizational specifications. If you can read, you take a look at it, you read what's been written, there is a certain point to it, but recently I also try to analyze what I've read. So allow me to share my thoughts on the matter. In my opinion, these ideological positions that in the former decades were at the forefront, it was a veil. It was a veil for the clash of geopolitical interests. And geopolitical interests is a thing of more depth, and they're closer to civilization. The Soviet Union collapsed, and the Russian short-witted former servicemen of the Soviet Union that now we're one family, civilized family. We will hug each other, we'll kiss each other on the lips despite following traditional values, and we will move forward as one joined family to live in great family relations. Nope. Even for me, for the former employee of the intelligence services of the Soviet Union when I headed the federal services, our partners, as I used to say, support separatism, support terrorists and Al-Qaeda in Northern Caucasus. And when I told them, "What are you doing? Have you gone mad?" This is all our people. Give us a large barrel of honey and let's just take swings together from it. But no. They were our so-called rivalries. I was the future director, and back in the day, George Bush introduced me to the secret papers in the presence of the CIA director, and he said, "Mr. President, you've taken note of these documents, top secret. Please sign here. This is how it works here." Okay, I signed for those documents. So while I was at the head of the federal services, Now that the former shackles of ideology have crumbled, what did I see? But the CIA is working over there in the Northern Caucasus and beyond, who have agents even among radicals, supplying them with financial support, supplying political support, giving them arms, transporting them in their helicopters. Even me, as a former employee of the secret services of the Soviet Union, even I, who have climbed up so high in the ranks, I was taken aback. That was the geopolitical struggle. They had no care in the world for ideological clashes. But we need to push down the remnants of the Soviet Union, its smallest part, and to do what Dzerzhinsky said, to crack it down in at least 4 parts. And some large world states that plans were harbored towards them, perhaps these plans are still being harbored. So what exactly does that mean? That the ideological opinions, according to these author, don't remember his name, he's quite an intelligent man, but they were nothing but a veil. But at the basis of those clashes are geopolitical or civilizational contradictions. Will there be further clashes? Struggle of interests takes place all the time on the international stage. The issue is whether we can shape our practical work in such a way, and I've already mentioned it, so that we can find consensus between one another, to find the balance of interests. We have great respect for ancient cultures and civilizations, to Indian civilization, Buddhists, the Chinese civilization, the Arab civilization, Russian civilization is not as ancient as the Chinese, Indian, or Arab, but it's also more than 1,000 years old, so we also have our own experience. So the trademark of our culture is that, yes, well, in Indian, Chinese, and Arab world, societies have been formed over the time. But historically, we have a multi-ethnical and multi-confessional. We never had any reservations. We've never had them, as my assistants like to say, when we've gained representatives of new nations, of new religious groups. We've always treated them with great respect. And we've always treated it as part of a whole. The U.S. is a melting pot, receiving representatives of different countries, but they're all immigrants there. They get ripped away from their own soil. Here, it is not like that. All the representatives of different religions and people, they find themselves on the same soil, coexisting for several centuries. And it is a special culture, a special kind of civilization that we have built here. And we've learned to live together, to continue developing together, and to understand the advantage of this joint development. And in this sense, I believe it's a great example to find compromises and trying to establish balance between other civilizations as well. So yes, of course, contradictions may arise, they're inevitable. But if we stand strong and follow the path that Russia followed while trying to form a united nation, then we can always find a way out of any problems.
Oh, so we're working for 3.5 hours. Probably we have to wrap up.
I'm afraid the audience might hate me. We were on this side. Let's move over to this side, please.
I'm from St. Petersburg University. I would have the following question. Some time ago, you made a very important initiative to prolong for 1 year the New START treaty with the United States. And in the West, that initiative is being silenced. And probably I'm overly optimistic, but let us hope that the common sense would prevail and that treaty would be prolonged, would be extended 1 year, and your initiative would be adopted. But what's next? Well, there would be an aim to prolong that treaty once again, where this is the last valid treaty, and we have to have another treaty in a more complex consideration, bearing in mind other poles.
Konstantin, it's hard for me to say what will happen because it not just depends on us. But if the U.S. administration responds to our proposal, what will happen in a year, I can foresee. But what happens beyond that, it's hard to tell. The dialogue is not a simple one. And we know the underlying rocks of it. We have new modernized weapon systems. Just look at Oreshnik. Not Oreshkin, Oreshnik. Just quite recently, we've shown that these types of arms are not strategic. But apparently, certain U.S. experts are saying, no, this is a strategic kind of arms. They need to figure it out because that requires time. We have hypersonic arms, daggers. And the intercontinental range arms avant-garde. We could get new systems. We haven't forgotten anything from what we've planned. The work goes on. There will be results. That is the first part. The second part is the tactic nuclear arms. They mentioned strategic, but the tactical, it's a lot more powerful than what the U.S. dropped on Japan, on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This is a lot more powerful. It's tactical. Of course, there are still underlying issues here. We're not placing it anywhere. Aside from Belarus. But the US are all over the world, in Europe and Turkey. But we have more of it. So this has to be figured out. There are a lot of things left to figure out. If we know that there are people in the US who say that they don't need any kind of governance, neither do we. Overall, we're okay. We are sure of our nuclear shield. We know what we need to do tomorrow and after that. But there is also an international aspect. Please convince China to join the system of the limitation of strategic arms. Whoever wants China to join it, please feel free to negotiate with them. If we need to involve China in it, why are we leaving the French and the UK nuclear potential behind? They're the NATO members, by the way. They want to provide their nuclear umbrella for the whole Europe. So there are a lot of complicated details that need a detailed look. If they want to maintain their status quo for a year, we're ready and we're willing. If not, okay. We have a parity, so the US have more submarines, but the nuclear charge on those submarines is more or less the same. They have more nuclear submarines, we have less of those of strategic importance. We have more targeted. And they also play a serious role in the overall score. We have also the rocket troops of strategic importance. And everyone understands who they are. So we're okay in the sense that our modernized level is higher than any other nuclear country in the world. And we have put a lot of work in it. It was intensive. So the level of modernity is especially high. We have strategic troops. We're ready to take a pause, to take a break, together with our US colleagues, to work in that area, if there is any sense to that. If it's unnecessary, then no. But that is, when it comes to deterrence, the strategic.
What about nuclear tests? Is it time?
We know that someone is ready for these nuclear tests, and if they're ready to do it, we will follow suit. Please. As a gentleman stood up, he can ask the question.
Mr. President, I'm from China Institute for Innovation and Development Strategy. We're the organizer of Understanding China Conference. It's one of the leading platforms for international exchanges in China, with the blessing of President Xi, of course. We're now collaborating with the Valdai Club to promote the mutual understanding of China and Russia, which we believe is a matter of extreme importance. And China-Russia relationship is at its all-time high, thanks to the personal efforts of Your Excellency and President Xi. And we believe it's equally important to further consolidate the foundation at people-to-people level. So with Valdai Club, we're going to organize some events in the annual meeting of Understand China this year. So, President, can you give us some advice on what we can do so that we can do a better job? And secondly, can you say a few words to the audience of the Understanding China Conference about the understanding of understanding of Russia? You have numerous friends in China, and they would love to hear your voice. But China is a big country. There are more people who need to have a better understanding of Russia. So a personal message from you would be of great help. Well, like not as a great leader, state leader, but as a brother to your Chinese sisters and brothers. Thank you.
You see, I can only say to my Chinese brothers and sisters that we're on the right track. We need to stay true to it. We need to cherish the relations that we have built between us and do everything in our power, no matter where we are, no matter how high in power we are, or maybe we're just working on the factories, cinema or in theater, or in a higher educational establishment, to reinforce this cooperation. It is of the highest importance both for the Chinese and the Russian people. And I would like to thank you for everything you've done so far and to wish you all the success. On our part, me personally, I'm sure the Chinese president will do everything to support you on that way.
We
need the floor, give the floor to Mr. Al-Faraj, because they took the mic from him, and then we'll wrap up. I'm glad to see you, Mr. President. Me too. You spoke about multipolar world. This is a very interesting question for all of us. We are the oil exporters, and we also import everything else that we need for development and for consumption. We are particularly interested in making sure there's free shipping lanes, and we also need to be able to export our oil safely and securely. Mr. President, this multipolar world in the future, can it ensure shipping is free and safe, and also in terms of energy supply for the entire world, considering the case with Nord Stream, so that it does not happen again?
As for ensuring sea security, I already said it, and I would like to reiterate it because it's especially important. Our adversaries always demand that we abide by international law. On our side, we demand that they abide by international law. International law. There is no mention of piracy or capture of someone's ships without any pretext, because it could lead to grave consequences. But if we stay true to the nature I've already mentioned, if the multipolar world continues to fight for the interests of every single person, trying to use instruments for the benefits of everyone, and secondly, I hope that the organizations and the citizens of countries whose leadership is trying to stir up the situation, including through the creation of problems of international logistics of international energy sector, whether it be political parties or organizations, public organizations, or citizens, may they do everything not to allow their leaders to allow for a real collapse or grave international aggravations. But no matter what happens, I'm convinced that the international energy will continue to operate securely in a sustainable manner, because the world economy is growing. The demand for first energy carriers, which is true for uranium, for energy stations, this is true for oil, gas. This demand will continue to grow. So there is no way out. International markets will continue to consume these energy carriers. Today we've spoken about uranium for the nuclear stations, but as for oil transportations, for oil excavation, today the most oil is found in the US, then Saudi Arabia and Russia. But it's impossible to imagine that the volume of Russian oil will preserve the stable situation in the world energy sector, in the world economy. This will never happen. Why? Because even in your worst nightmare, no matter how impossible it is, but if we just imagine for a second that we push out the Russian producers, Russian traders, who supply significant amount of oil on the world market, if this were to happen, the prices would skyrocket immediately, beyond hundreds of dollars. Is this truly working for the benefits of the economies of the countries who, these European economies, either no one has no care for it or understands that, but still tries to seek confrontation. But no matter what happens, these demands of the world market for energy carriers will be satisfied. This will be done, including thanks to the people working in this important area, important for the international economy area. In large thanks to people like you. Thank you so much.
Mr. President, in your introductory remarks, you mentioned one very important thing when you...
At least one important thing I mentioned. I did not waste my time today.
I mentioned one thing, to be more precise. You said that the bans do not work. The bans do not work. This has been the slogan of the Valdai Club for 23 years. Here, we never banned anything. We tried to provide incentives for discussions, debates, and we will continue doing so. And we do hope that this principle will spread all over the world, as you said, and to other countries, and our country as well, because we also sometimes have this desire to ban more than necessary. We will try to spread this Valdai spirit to the whole country. And another important thing today, and what I heard from you, we know who is the comfortable person for you to talk to. This is a high standard. We'll be also trying to reach the same level so that you come to us more often and you feel comfortable.
First of all, I would like to say that I have a lot of people I find comfortable to talk to, so that you don't think I have favorites. I speak very seriously. You see how our work is done. I don't think there are many countries that I haven't visited, but I haven't seen much of them. How my work looks like: airport, airplane, meeting room, airplane, airport, Kremlin, Kremlin, airport, trip. I don't see a single dime of it. But there's always someone you talk to. And unfortunately, it's all very true to protocol. And this protocol rules, they just knock the sense out of any discussion. Sometimes there are moments, very rare, you have these moments where you and your colleague are just talking. It's so rare. Sometimes we have that with Prime Minister Modi, with Chinese President Xi, when he came to St. Petersburg. We sat down and we went on a boat. And we went past Aurora. And I asked, "Oh, do you want to come see it?" And yes, we went around just to take a look. So for the Chinese leader, so for the president of the Chinese Communist Party. And then we went to Hermitage, where we saw the performance of our artists. And this was true open human communication, but it's such a rare occurrence. Usually, sat down, you talked, you left, you got your suitcase, you take off and you fly. But true, deep, interesting people, there are so many of them. But due to truly unfortunate circumstances, they don't always find themselves in the position of power. So these are people who have struggled a lot, who have gone through a lot of tests. I now have an upcoming visit to Tajikistan, where the Commonwealth of Independent States are meeting. I will meet with the president of Tajikistan. And in the post-Soviet states, there are a lot of interests of one another. And just as an example, after the seizure of power by radical Islamists, the current president of Tajikistan, Mr. Narahman, entered the capital of his country, Dushanbe, with an arm in his hands. And now he has changed the situation. Of course, it's not easy. All of this to say that all of these people are so interesting to talk to, and of course, I hope that this community of people you can truly sit down and talk to will continue to expand, to grow, and there will be new ways of coming to agreements on the key issues of world development and world agenda. And the intellectual elite gathered here today will continue to assist us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed.